Hello, everybody. This is the weekly AI Revolution call. I'm Bryce Smith, and we have John Deo here, who joins us every week. John is our resident AI expert and industry veteran, and I work at 10,000 Days Capital, which is a hedge fund, and we manage a long-only fund, and we also have our Trading with Cody newsletter service. So happy to be here. Happy with you, as always, John.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
So let's jump in. We haven't had this call, I think, in a couple weeks now. And as always, seems like there's an endless stream of news in the AI world. Every time you think it's slowing down, it never really is. And so, we put a few things kind of in the description that we were going to hit on today. I guess one of the things that kind of jumped out at me that's circulating right now is this rumor that OpenAI is raising money at a $500 billion valuation. Half $1 trillion in the private markets is unheard of. And so I don't know how much money they're raising at that amount, but it's probably $10 billion or something. And so it's got one of the things we put in here is like, are we in a bubble? Is OpenAI really worth $500 billion? So what do you think, John?
Well,
first of all, do you think the rumor is true?
No.
Okay.
I mean, think back. It was last year, and Sam Altman was talking about they were gonna need. I thought he said $3 trillion or something like that. But he said they were gonna need to raise $3 trillion, and I don't think they did that. Right? They maybe 600 billion or something, just some small number like that in terms of their big project that they got going with Matsu from Japan and SoftBank and
Masa-san.
Yeah, Masa-san. So first off, no, I mean I think that he kind of shoots high and then settles in somewhere. By the way, we also haven't spoken since GPT-5 came out.
Yeah, and that's tied in with this. Mm-hmm. So, I think I don't know that the rumor's true. I mean, I think the last round was at like 350 billion or something like that. That was actually acknowledged by OpenAI and SoftBank and everything. But I mean, it does make it feel a little bit bubblicious to like toss these kind of numbers around for a startup, especially a startup that has like major corporate governance problems that needs to work out still. Most people probably know that OpenAI is technically a nonprofit that's supposed to make open source AI, and instead they have a for-profit subsidiary that makes closed source AI. And Elon Musk loves to give them a hard time about that.
They came out with some open source.
Yeah, they finally did release their first open model in like 2 years or something like that. I haven't played with it, or I don't really know much about the open model that they released.
So they went from also 5 billion in recurring revenue in 24 to 10 billion in recurring revenue this year.
Yeah,
that's
even 50 times sales, I mean, their revenue is growing double 100% year over year. And, they have probably the best. I mean, they're closing in on like 1 billion in users, I think, right? Don't they have like 700 million users on ChatGPT now?
Yeah. And I don't think that gets enough kind of credit. I'm more and more seeing that the kind of installed base of users really matters here, because whatever you come out with, whether you come out with like they just did an integrated model that kind of combines the different things they've had before into one kind of
right.
offering and everything. That look at how many individuals and businesses are affected and affect them with that. So
yeah,
it's a big deal.
And they really haven't turned on the monetization Valve yet. They have subscriptions, but the overwhelming majority of those 700 million users are free users. And so those, I don't, if anybody's played with chat, I canceled our chat GPT subscriptions a while back when we went all in on Google's platform. And but now if you're on the free tier of chat GPT, you get like 4 or 5 questions on the GPT-5. And then it starts hitting you with, hey, you need to upgrade. You need to upgrade if you want to keep getting the best AI responses. So I do think they're clearly trying to drive the monetization and start to convert. And I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're converting a lot of those free users into $20 a month paid users with this change.
Then they have their $200 a month version, which among developers, the talk is that that's the only version that matters.
Really,
what it's capable of. I know I don't have the $200 a month version, so
are you a pro subscriber though?
Yeah,
do you the $20 a month?
Right. I've been a pro subscriber for a while, I guess over a year, and I'm also a pro subscriber, if that's what you call it, on Claude, Anthropic Claude. So those are the two that I use.
I was just going to share this for reference here to give some context to how big this number is. If they were raising money at 500 billion, it would put them at the top 20 companies in the world by market cap. You can see here ExxonMobil is at 454 billion right now. So,
it's where all the new money's going,
right?
Like investments on top of whatever was already happening is happening at 60% to AI or something of all the money going on out there.
John, are you worried? Like a lot of the market Wall Street types are concerned that these companies aren't going to be profitable for a long time. And I think even OpenAI has admitted like they probably won't be profitable until like 2030 or something like that. And he might spend $1 trillion on data centers before then. So like,
is that a long time? 2030?
Yeah, I mean, if you gotta go, if your burn rate is, I think they're going to burn $5 or $6 billion in cash this year, is what they said. And so they're going to burn, 50 to 100. I mean, I would guess $50 billion from here or something, before they've reached that break-even point. And so, I mean, is it a problem? Like people in the industry worry that, OpenAI and Anthropic, these guys, like if the bubble bursts between now and then, and we have, the spending stops on all these GPUs, like does AI development just flatline from there, or how do you see that playing out?
Well, so look at that scenario. What would it mean? What would it mean for the bubble to burst? Would it mean that we have given up on trying to beat China? Right? I mean, because just from the level of the whole country and kind of our defense posture, and like this is not like the internet 1998 1999 kind of bubble where, oh no, people are going to stop shopping, or e-commerce is going to go. This is not that kind of if it is a bubble, it's not that kind of bubble.
Yeah,
we can't lose. Like we can't. It's not one that we can't afford to lose. And so, however much it happens from the private side at the moment and so forth, I think that people will jump in and make sure that it kind of keeps moving along. Certainly, there's definitely going to be some companies that went in too deep in particular areas, but I don't think so. So if the bubble bursts, we have a bigger problem than just some people lost some investment money. Because one thing is, you don't have to lose it. You don't lose it until you sell it. And Amazon lost 90% of their value in 1999. And
I guess the difference is, though, John, like with the internet, like the underlying, when the bubble popped in 2000, the underlying technology still largely kept moving forward. Like you mentioned, Amazon and Google and a lot of other companies were still in their nascent stages, still growing, getting adoption. But with the internet didn't require hundreds of billions of dollars of capital expenditure on a recurring basis to work, and for AI to keep improving, they have to keep spending tens of billions of dollars. Each company does.
Not to work, just to keep improving, incrementally over each other in a competitive way and so forth. So if you didn't have that money being spent at the level it's happening right now, they would still function because they what's happened has happened, and at least the train time side of things, has occurred to a point. How long will it take for the technology we have today to be just not worthwhile, not adding enough, enough technological advancement? Probably 10 years. We've got like 10 years worth of growth that can happen off of what is already there. So I just, even so I can see again, like it bursting in certain areas. Probably, the other thing is that a lot of the companies that are heavily invested in this have other business. This isn't all they're doing. Right. Google, it's like it's been around. It's still around. Microsoft. It's like these companies, exist anyway and have revenues anyway. Unlike, again, what was it like for Webvan or whatever popping up.
I was just going to address SK's question here. He asked, where's Cody? He is sick, and so he is not joining us this week. So send him your thoughts and prayers, and he's doing all right, but he's under the weather. So, and then we have a comment here from Craig. They haven't raised the price of their $20 subscription since inception either, but they did introduce like the $200 tier, as John mentioned. And are the API prices going up, John? I don't watch those.
No, they went down.
They keep going down.
Yeah, they're still higher than there's other competitors out there with lower pricing, but as compared to their own stuff, it's gone down.
Yeah, and I do want to circle back on what you're saying about these companies having other revenue, Microsoft and Google, most importantly, and Amazon, right? So Microsoft, Google, and Amazon are the chief, and Meta are the ones that are spending them by far, other than OpenAI, far and above the most on AI. And they're doing it with their cash flow from their business. It's not like they're even having to go out to the debt markets, although that might eventually happen. At this point, they're able to fund all of this spending purely with the cash flow on other businesses.
Yeah, how much cash does Alphabet have? How much cash does Apple have?
Yeah, I mean they over 100 billion for each.
Over 100 billion.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and they generate like $20 billion a quarter or something.
Yeah. So I mean, and Apple hasn't even kicked in yet, and they're often a latecomer. People maybe think of them as being innovative, and maybe they're innovative on the the design side or something, but they didn't invent anything that they come out with. They just kind of made it better. They didn't invent the smartphone. They just made it. They just kind of took it over to the point where they're the Kleenex. Like the brand that people just name it by now.
Right.
So they have an opportunity to, and they'll play it their own way. And I think it'll lean heavily on, OpenAI, possibly others, where they'll be like, we're not out there trying to, compete as the cutting edge language model. We're trying to be the best user experience.
Right.
And we're going to see. And so that whole game has just begun. I think another aspect of it is the kind of operator feature, which means like getting it to control your computer, getting it to like whatever your computer can do, What if you could talk to your computer the way you talk to ChatGPT and have it do anything that your computer does? Like say, hey, can you go get rid of all the junk mail out of my email and do this and the other and blah, blah. And just because it could have control over those things, it's like the next wave that hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah. Well, one of the chief complaints that gets lodged at Google is that they haven't done enough of that. Like I've seen people like, hey, Gemini should already to just be able to do anything across the Google ecosystem. Go get my file. I should be able to talk to my Android. Hey, send this spreadsheet to John. He's in my email. Here's the name of the spreadsheet. It goes into Drive and sends it to you. Here with a question or whatever. And it can already draft emails. It can work across Drive, but there isn't a unified way to have Gemini just do everything for you. And I've thought about that a lot, but I think there's a lot riding on Google getting that right. These aren't like experimental little products that a few million people use. Like these are products that hundreds of millions of people use every day. And so you don't want to put out an AI product on top of that and then like ruin the user experience of Gmail or ruin the experience of Drive, right? Like they have to, you can knock them that they're not going faster, but on the other hand, like you can't, your risk if you do it and do it wrong is also somewhat high.
I think what you're supposed to do if you're a large company and you don't want to get like out innovated by Perplexity or whoever comes along is compete with yourself.
Right.
And I think Steve Jobs did that for a bit. He'll have like the Apple II team going up against the Mac team, and they're both operating, and it's like go at it. Who's going to do it better? But from our side of things, what that might look like is don't mess with what's there. Don't mess with Gmail. Come out with another communication system. It probably still has mail as an aspect to it, but those who are kind of pioneers, can jump on the new thing, and they'll willing to risk kind of going over there.
Yeah.
And maybe you only get 10 million people using that, but you're off to a good start. And by the time it's really doing well, you fade people over. But it's like you compete with yourselves,
right?
Because this whole thing about this is where they get themselves in trouble. That Microsoft as well is where they kind of get caught on. Held up by their own success. Yeah. Oh no, we can't do something. It might damage what we have there already.
Right. Yeah. I guess my point is just that, like, there is some good business sense into why they are that way at times. But it runs you run the risk of disruption if you're not moving at the speed of light or the speed.
And if you don't disrupt yourselves,
right.
Yeah.
No, totally. We did one thing on the Apple thing is we've had all of the quarterly earnings reports from all of these companies now for the second quarter, and Apple did say that they're starting to like move in the direction of spending a lot more on capital expenditures and building data centers and things. They have this concept that they call like the private cloud, where your data can be sent to a private cloud that nobody has access to, even Apple, and then the LLM can work in that private cloud and then send the response back. But I mean, it does seem like Apple's sort of being pulled in this direction. Like, I don't really know that they have a choice in the matter,
No, right. I'm saying, I think that they're trying to determine what role they're going to play.
Yeah.
And I think when I heard about that, it sounded right. It sounded like the right kind of a thing to do, because already they have this reputation that, I don't care who you are, we're not giving your data to whoever, kind of thing. Right. They've given in a few times on that, I think, in extreme cases. But generally, it's like, but now they're setting it up to be like, hey, we don't even know, because, and a lot of people won't believe that, but I think they will get it audited by third parties and validated. And, the fact that the way that it's set up is such that it's encryption at rest in a place that they don't access, and all of that kind of thing. So it could be a really good move, but they still have to get right that user experience of like, okay, great. So I get that it's out there. Now, if I've got that, what can I do? What does that enable for me?
Yeah. SK here says, I've heard no two bubbles are the same. And, that's true. It's the old Mark Twain adage that, history rhymes, but doesn't repeat. I don't even know if that was actually him, but it gets attributed to him, I think, is the way it goes. But anyways, yeah, I think, I was reading somebody who said that this week, like at the time of the .com bubble, a lot of those people that were investing back then had never been through a tech-led like bubble before. There had been bubbles. There's always been bubbles in the past. There was like the conglomerate boom of the 70s, and I don't know, the banking loan, savings and loans crisis, which I don't know that was necessarily a bubble, but it was sort of a lending, housing, mortgage bubble that ended up popping. But there are a lot of people that lived through 2000 .com burst that are still active investors, that are even individual investors that were burned in that. And so everyone is constantly questioning whether or not, this is the .com days all over again. And the thought occurred to me, I'm like, the very fact that so many people are asking that question probably means it's not like the .com bubble, 2.0.
Because you would be able to predict it.
Right. Right. Yeah. If it was really that predictable and everybody could see it coming, then it also necessarily means it never happens.
What has us even asking? So you talked about OpenAI and their potential valuation. You talk about NVIDIA and how they're trading at what
4.4 trillion market cap.
What's that?
$4.4 trillion market cap.
It's kind of a lot. That's almost starts to be a lot of money.
Yeah, so they could go sell 10% of the company and almost put as much cash on the balance sheet as OpenAI is reportedly worth, which they don't need to do that because they're also printing, tons of money right now. I do think I wrote this week or last week that this AI CapEx cycle is actually still accelerating, and the companies are going to spend way more next year on CapEx and NVIDIA chips than they are this year. And that's only happening because, the cloud customers and the hyperscalers themselves and the largest users of AI are getting returns from it, right? Like if you look at Meta's business, like Meta's spending hundreds of billions of dollars on AI data centers, and they don't sell any of that compute to third parties, right? They use it all internally, and somehow their profit margins are higher than they've ever been.
Yeah.
So, if Meta wasn't getting any return, if you couldn't generate return with AI, like Meta would sort of let us know that was the case. And obviously their use case in terms of advertising and the recommendation algorithm and all that is a little unique to them. But regardless, it just tells me that AI actually is driving returns for the largest users of AI.
Interestingly, the GPT-5 comes out and was a bit of a letdown. Everyone was initially like, "Oh, amazing," and then a day later realizing, "Yeah, not as amazing as we all hoped," or whatever. Right. And so, in a way, we're farther from like AGI than people were talking about. With that point where it's just like, okay, computers are smarter than people, that they understand the whole world, as well as people do. So not only are we not there, the kind of the arc that gets us there seems like it's not as steep. Seems like it's going to be longer. Right. But I wonder if, ironically, that's good for the markets, because getting there so fast on such a steep whatever, where everything's getting thrown into it, isn't people don't know how to, companies don't know how to make
Right.
use of that. Whereas when you get, and you can look ahead and go, oh, we have our new Moore's law, it's a curve that we can understand and we can watch, and it's definitely improvement still
Sure.
happening on a very rapid basis, but we can kind of watch it happen. And, it happened with this kind of thing it happened with pre-training, and then it's happening with inference and the test time
Mhm.
training. And then you've got like agents and what's happening with those. So there's like stuff developing that people are learning what to do with and learning how to make value out of, instead of being like, any day now we're going to get blown away by something that just takes it all away.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I think there was this like sort of fear that you have like the AI takeoff scenario is what I've heard some people call it, where
Fast
basically
takeoff, yeah.
that the AI gets so good that it can start to improve itself, right? And so the first company to hit that magic spot where the AI is good enough to improve itself, then it's just like a runway from there, right? And then nobody ever catches them. Every AI startup, every AI competitor, everybody else is taken out basically overnight, and this one company that builds AGI wins everything, right? And I think we can confidently say that that's not
Yep. I just don't see that happening now. And I think that GPT-5 was the evidence there was underwhelming. And like I said, it's weird, but it's that may be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. There, even the idea that like, they call these companies wrappers, right? Like LLM wrappers. Like, oh, you take something that ChatGPT did, you build some kind of slick user interface that's designed. Oh, this is the GPT for healthcare or whatever. You know what I mean? And people are like, oh, that's not actually a viable business model. But I think we're learning that there are, whether you call them wrappers or not, but there are a lot of applications built on top of large language models that are incredibly valuable and have a unique value proposition that the LLMs don't have. And in my mind, the best example of that for me is Replit. That's the AI app builder we've been using, and I think it uses Claude as the underlying LLM. But basically, they built an agent that can help you design software end to end, right? And it can set up a database for you and set up authentication and everything. Set up your backend server, like everything you need to build an app, right? And that's that I think Replit is now like over $100 million in annual recurring revenue, and I think it would technically fall under the category of a AI wrapper.
It's a tough business because they do kind of provide inference as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then that becomes the really expensive part of what they're doing. And the users are insatiable around that aspect. So it's like thin margins
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah, and they may even, I think at one point the CEO of Replit even said they were subsidizing the compute, like selling it at a loss, just to get user growth. And obviously that can't go on forever, right?
No, that's actually a bad business model.
Yeah, negative gross margins are not a business you want to be in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, the market, there's so much wealth out there today, and there's so much money in the private markets, and venture capital is so well established, private equity is so well established. There's a lot of money out there that can, help support these loss leading businesses as they scale. And so it is like, if you want to talk about bubble dynamics, you could say, okay, well, that money might dry up, and then all of this inference and all these trillion, or like Google's doing a quadrillion tokens right now in a month. Like, oh, 50% of those tokens were subsidized and losing money, so obviously that's unsustainable.
So
But even if that was 100% true, there's still a lot of money we could burn before. Like,
yeah, I would worry more about not burning the money so much as not having something to burn it on.
yeah,
And there is just a lot happening in a lot of areas to go put the money into.
right,
Is there, because there seems to be enough more capital behind that, that can keep following it up for a while. And the I think having good government support for for AI growth, both for the infrastructure stuff, the energy behind it, the data centers, trying to kind of get rapid permitting and so forth, because we're talking about this growth it's physical. It shows up as Tesla's or XAI's new data center in Memphis, and the new one down in Texas that OpenAI is doing. And these places are huge, and they're using up like as much electricity as a small state.
Yeah.
So there's having that kind of support is going to help as well.
And there is some compounding effect to that in the economy. It's not like that money just evaporates, right? Like that's real jobs. It's steel, it's generators, it's pipelines, like there's a lot of physical infrastructure that's needed to do all this. And like, that's actually a huge tailwind for the economy. If like, I think next year, the estimate is the hyperscalers are going to spend around $450 billion on capital expenditure. And like, I looked up, like, just wanted to put some context on that number, that's more than the Treasury Department spent on the TARP program. If you guys remember 2008, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, where they went out and bought a bunch of bonds off the bank balance sheets that were worthless, right? That was a huge deal at the time, was spending $450 billion on TARP. And now we have 4 private companies that are doing that in a year.
What was the kind of the government spend on COVID, on business during COVID? Because they were doing a lot of they were doing a lot of shoring up and making sure that while nobody's able to work, we're not going to let things go under and so forth. Was that comparable to what happened in 2008?
It looks like it's much larger. It says the federal government, this is from the Government Accountability Office, had spent around $4.6 trillion to help the country recover from COVID.
And now I don't know what's real or not, but we supposedly have investments coming in almost on that level from Saudi Arabia and kind of the Middle East. And right, there's lots of places money's coming from. But I think that's examples of, the world wanting to be able to play in what's happening.
Right.
And
right now, the perception is that the greater risk is to underinvest and not be a part of this than it is to overbuild. Just because there's no signs, like the risk is that, okay, we turn all these data centers on, and then all this capacity comes online, and then there's no demand for it. But so far, every time we fire up a new data center, it's the demand for the compute is instantly there. We're invested in a company called CoreWeave. Some folks may be familiar with it, which is they call themselves the AI hyperscaler. They're a direct competitor to Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud and everything. And the large hyperscalers are actually some of their largest customers. Microsoft Azure is their largest customer, or OpenAI, one of the two. They're related.
Well, that's interesting, because that puts them down as kind of the infrastructure under the infrastructure.
Exactly.
And they're the AI cloud, right?
Exactly. And so like when they reported last week or 2 weeks ago, and they continue to be capacity constrained. As soon as they can get a new data center fired up, there's a customer lined up to take all of that compute for the next, and they're signing like 5-year deals, right? This isn't like them selling it to the spot, what they call the spot market, like, right, where you can just, as an independent developer, you can just go in and rent a GPU. Like, this compute is overwhelmingly being purchased by the largest AI customers in the world that I mentioned, and they're doing it for 5 years, and they're even signing deals to purchase the old compute. Like, so NVIDIA is on the Blackwell system now, right? The B200. Before that, it was Hopper. Before that was Ampere. I can't remember how you say the name, the A's. But they said that customers are actually signing new renewal leases to rent those old A chips, the A100s, that are now 5-6 years old. But those chips are still useful for inference, right? You're not going to do a huge training run on those old chips, but they're still signing. There's probably 2 or 3 years left of value just to run inference on those chips.
That's interesting, right? I mean,
Yeah.
instead of it just being that as soon as there's something new, the one before it becomes useless, it's like, no, there's kind of a good, healthy aftermarket.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And they actually said they would like to have spare capacity because it actually hampers like their sales pipeline a little bit, because they would like to diversify beyond just selling to the big hyperscalers. Morgan Stanley is a customer now, and banks and other enterprises are coming to them and would like to rent compute, but they don't have the compute to offer most of them. And if they had actually some spare capacity, they could really build out their sales pipeline a lot more and, kind of diversify the customer base.
Yeah. There's a interesting parallel subplot going on among developers or individuals that use the technologies, like the $200 version I was talking about, like the latest kind of stuff, where the talk is get in now and start using this technology to make money in ways that it hasn't happened. So not only just go start business off somewhere, but just even individuals going and creating value and so forth, because you've got X amount of time left. You've got 2 years left, 3 years left or something. Before what? Well, before this stuff does get too smart for you to be able to stay ahead and be making money with it. And you got to get on that side of things where you've made the money.
Mm-hmm.
And so that whatever comes next is like, okay, I've got that in the bank. I'm ready to take on existing in this kind of post AGI world kind of thing. Because we still are facing kind of the technology getting so smart that it's going to cause some kind of inflection point in the way things work.
Right. I think as an investor, though, like, it's hard to make that actionable in some ways, because it's like, okay, well, so that means the only companies that are like investable are basically the ones that are working towards AGI, which is like Google, OpenAI, NVIDIA is not building it, but they're going to be the ones selling the chips to do it. So like every software company is uninvestable. Every other tech company is uninvestable, and
I think it's not that, I don't know about software companies that set them aside, but for many, many companies, it's not about whether they're the AI company. It's about whether they take advantage of it.
Yeah. And it's, it is like when we were in Vail, Colorado at that investment conference in June that we go to, one of the guys presented on AI, and it was an okay presentation, but the best thing he said is that the second order effects of AI are going to be larger than the first order. And I totally agree with that. And so then we start, we have a panel discussion. We start talking about, well, what are the second or third order effects? And my point was, I'm like, it's the whole economy, right? Like almost every business, like you said, the tech space is a little bit different because you could be disrupted, but like John Deere, Coca-Cola, JP Morgan, right? These insurance businesses, all of these, the S&P 500 X tech is going to be a huge beneficiary of the productivity gains from AI.
I tried out a technology that I think we may be getting incorporated into our product. So I want to get specific about the name of them, but they do a voice agent that is so good. I went and tried it. I was testing it out and using it in with a particular kind of scenario. And then I went and looked at it from like the scenario of it's going to make phone calls that are lead generation. It's going to go find new business. And I was talking back and forth and saying, oh, just hold on a second. And I think I got this and what, but I think we're, not necessarily trying to throw it off, but just trying to be really natural about a conversation. It kept up with me across the board. Very good response time. It tends to, and it probably should, say up front that it's an AI. But if you get over that hurdle, then you're on to like, what's the value prop, and why are are you interested? How are you taking care of this thing now? What would you do if you could do it this other way, and so forth? And you're just trying to get to a, follow-up scheduled call with a human where, I got you a hot lead. This is somebody who actually might be interested,
Right.
or whatever. But all of that work on kind of, I'm forgetting the word right now, but qualifying. All the qualifying can go on. This stuff is amazing, and there are companies starting to use it at scale. Like they've got it making 1,000 calls, and it's not spam. It's on a very particular topic, and you don't want to talk, don't talk,
Right.
but it's able to provide the value. It's incredible. So,
well, that's I've been doing a bunch of work on a company called Twilio. I don't know if you're familiar
sure,
with.
Yeah, I used to use Twilio. This is somebody else, but yeah.
Yeah, and basically they build APIs, which are application programming interfaces for folks that aren't familiar. Basically, John, correct me if I say this wrong, but APIs are sort of how software talks to each other. Anyways, Twilio makes a set of communications APIs, and they basically abstracted the complexity of the telecom world, and text messaging and voice and video calls and all these things. And so that if you're a developer building an application, you can just tie into Twilio's APIs. And if you want to make phone calls, if you want to send your customers text messages, most of you have probably experienced like the two-factor authentication, right? Where you sign into an app, you get a text message to your phone. That all Twilio overwhelmingly runs that market. And I think it's a really interesting investment here, because all of these AIs and all these apps that are being built, like there's going to be some incredible voice AI like you're talking about. And I still think if you build an app and use voice AI, Twilio is still the best way to get that voice AI, like to actually make phone calls and that people, can talk to.
Well, I think that's true infrastructure wise, but I haven't seen what they do for keeping up with the actual, the voice agent, being real time and very believable conversation kind of thing. Maybe they're keeping up on that front.
They're not building their own voice agent, but they're a layer underneath the voice agent. Yeah. Maybe they're on top of the voice agent. I'm not sure what the right way to say it.
Yeah, it may be that these other folks use Twilio underneath what they do, and that makes it another one of those like a good infrastructure investment. Is Twilio public?
Yeah, TWLO. It's about $105 a share. It's actually not that expensive for a software company. It's trading like 19 times forward estimates and growing. I think the estimate right now is 10% revenue growth or something the next year. But I think there's upside potential to the revenue estimates if some of this AI stuff starts to through to them.
I used them for years. I found them to be very reliable and doing a good job.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the software infrastructure side of things. Like there's even building apps on Replit, so it can build the app, it can set it up for you. But if you want data, okay, I still got to go get an API to a data source, right? And if I want like the phone call thing, right? If you want it to be able to make phone calls, you got to go get APIs from Twilio. Like there's still all these like third party. The way somebody said it is like very few applications are monoliths, right? Almost all of them tie into a number of other applications. And so if you are one of those like pieces of the software plumbing, I think there's going to be even more demand for that as the number of AI applications skyrockets, because AI is making the coding itself so much easier. But I don't think somebody's going to why would a company go build its own like Twilio platform where you can talk to all the Twilio has all these agreements in place with the telecom providers. They have data centers all over the world so that they can, what you call points of presence, POPs, so that they can deliver the service very quickly. And in the United States, we have basically 3 telcos, but globally there's hundreds of these things. And so if you're a developer and you are working on a global scale, you don't want to have to go set up software so that you can talk to Deutsche Telekom and British Telecom and AT&T and the Korean one, right? Like that's just not that useful. That's not a very useful allocation of your time and resources to set all that up.
So when is Neo4j planning an IPO?
Who's that?
So they are, speaking of infrastructure, I use them. They're a graph database company.
Okay, and say the name again.
It's a weird name. It's one word, NEO numeral 4J. Neo4j.
Okay.
And Neo4j is they're based in somewhere Scandinavia. I don't know, Sweden, Finland, something. And there's talk about them having an IPO, and they currently, I think, have over a 2 billion valuation. And they're a very important ingredient in a lot of the AI systems that are being developed that combine a language model with a database behind it, where the database behind it is not your traditional kind of tables like a relational database like Oracle or an SQL database. It's not like that. It's like a network of connected concepts, and it's very amenable to the systems that get built with LLMs.
So can you explain like the different types of databases and how you would use like I know there's like Postgre, SQL, and there's
Postgres is just like MySQL or Oracle.
It's an open source standard, I guess, or
all of that stuff is standard SQL databases,
okay,
SQL databases, and they're
would you call that a relational database?
Relational databases, yes. Okay. And they're the picture like an Excel spreadsheet, just like a grid of data, but not like where stuff's just scattered all around on the sheet, but like a clean, dense, filled in grid where every thing across the top, each column is like name, address, phone number, whatever.
Right.
And each thing down the side is John Doe, Bob Smith, Mary, whatever.
Right.
So each row is a record, is a different like set of information about one individual. And each column is, here's all the phone numbers, that kind of thing. So that chunk, and then having typically a couple hundred of those, right? Different tables, all kind of hooked to each other to store the data that's needed. Each kind of subject, like contact information, that or employees, that's one. Projects, that's one.
Right.
Any companies, that's one. So each one of those is its own. And the rows in it, although you think of it like a spreadsheet, actually those rows will go for like 1 million.
I see.
There'd be like a whole bunch of those rows, and those columns might go for a couple hundred columns. So
it's not something where people are manually in there like inputting all that data either, right? It's all flows from like data pipelines and things.
It's typically, well, you can have data flowing in from pipelines and so forth, but there is a lot of manual stuff happening, but not directly to the table. Most of the SaaS applications out there are just a UI, a user interface on the front end of one of these big databases. And every time you get on a screen that's got like a form with some fields on it, and you hit like add, enter, whatever kind of thing, you're updating one single record and the related stuff. And that's the way it's been since the 80s.
That's what they call CRUD, right?
Yeah. Well, CRUD is create, read, update, delete. So that's like, what can you do to one of those tables? This, what you set up doing is, I'm going to create a new record. I'm going to look at it by reading it. I'm going to change something in it to update it. And then I'm going to delete it when it gets, so that's the life cycle of data within one of these things. But really, so much of the applications out there are really boring. they are just the right chunk of data that was needed to get a certain thing done. Think of like a Redfin. What's going on there? Well, they've got millions of records where each one of those records is a listing. And then off from that listing are other tables that handle all the pictures and all the maps and all the whatever, all the allowable values for how many bedrooms there can be, or every little bit of it. So that's just all the data. And then you've got, well, what does that look like to the user? And something gets put in front of them. So when AI came along, the latest kind of AI, the OpenAI and the ChatGPT and all this kind of stuff, this is the first new thing to happen in 30, 40 years. That's really interesting and new.
Yeah.
There were other things,
I mean, the cloud probably should be thrown in there, right? The shift from on-prem to the cloud.
Well, even when you got up on the cloud, you were still, what were you sticking on the cloud? A bunch of CRUD databases.
Right.
So you changed how it got maintained and where it got put and so forth. But was there real innovation in what people were actually getting? What they were able to work with? Not that much. Then you had throughout the 2010s, you had the first kind of wave of AI with all of predictive analytics and
machine learning stuff.
Machine learning, prediction machines. And there it was like, now that database we're talking about is still there, but some of the fields in it are now getting filled in a smart way, predicted by the machine. But now, the ChatGPT and all the LLM stuff, large language model stuff, has just changed things absolutely completely. It's the difference between orange juice and rocket ship. It's like there's nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. So and an LLM can very accurately tell you that orange juice and rocket ship don't usually appear next to each other in a sentence.
Well, they'll find out that the really thing they have in common is Tang, which was an orange drink that the astronauts had, and it'll go find that out. But they're like things to do with just the world that we live in, and being able to, you set aside for a minute, well, is it really smart and all this kind of stuff? And certainly no, it's not conscious, and who cares? But like it can really hit on everything in the world that we go and deal with. So it breaks it wide open.
So go back to the database thing. This is a little technical, folks, but I think it has big investing implications, because there are companies like Mongo database and those kinds of things. So tell me now, with the AI stuff, how has it changed how you use the database?
So about hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
So these language models, they can be really smart, but when they're stupid, they're going to sound really smart.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't work
right.
for businesses that rely on accurate information. So by themselves, they have not solved that problem. They still have. They'll keep pushing on the frontier of it to be like, it's not making as many of those kinds of mistakes.
Yeah.
And also the information that's in the language model is like the entire internet, but in compressed form, where it can't decompress it back out to get it word for word of what it was. So it's not like knowing everything. It's having good sort of common sense about everything. But when you want to get back to actual information, think about lawyers, and they want to be able to say, I want to actually say what was the case that I can bring to use on this thing. Well, then you better have access to the actual full data, which the language model does not have.
Yeah.
It used the full data to create itself, but it doesn't have it in it. So now when you get into this world of AI applications, they have to bring those pieces together. The language model or the generative AI together with the real data, which is in the form of all the laws in the world or in the country or so forth, or all the data in my company's database and everything like that. So for it to bring that stuff together well, you actually need a really good database to work with the LLM. And what our company has found is that graph database, and not just ours, but lots of them have found that the graph database is a great way to go for that. And so what's been called RAG, retrieval augmented generation that goes and gets some chunks of text that it can pull in and use for the LLM. Now more popular is GraphRag. And it's taking a graph database and being able to use it to get the right stuff back into that LLM and make it as smart as it can be.
So do you know if what type of database MongoDB does? I think they have a no. I'm just looking at that. It's a no SQL.
NoSQL. Yeah, it's called NoSQL database, and it's a property value database. And so it's another kind, and it gets used a lot. Where they're really strong is in projects that need to go ramp up very quickly and need to put some kind of storage on their back end. It's good for it's documented oriented data.
That's one of the things that they're supposed to. I think Mongo database does this well. Is that like if you're dealing with unstructured data, right? That's not neatly in columns and rows. Like if you just have a random invoice or a picture or things like that that aren't right, then you use a NoSQL database to store that kind of unstructured data. Is that right?
Yeah, they kind of ended up getting NoSQL to mean something like Mongo when I've always taken it to mean not SQL. So like I would put the graph database in as NoSQL as well. It's not a SQL database. But yes, they are document oriented. For a bit there, you had kind of this, they call it a vector database, but there's not much database there. You're kind of just having chunks of text and they're getting indexed in a way that's probably too technical to talk about. But that technical way of indexing them, or like semantic based indexing, is now being used across the board. I'm sure Mongo's using vectors. The graph database is using vectors. I'll just say it's like, picture again the spreadsheet, but where a single term, anything, pogo stick, any term of anything, whatever, is represented by like 1,000 numbers just for that one concept. And those numbers, there's math that can be done on it so that jump and pogo stick end up with numbers that are like close to each other.
Okay. So sort of the way that LLMs work, right? And it's just kind of that same vector relational concept.
The vectors like in language models, in LLMs, is the same kind of vector.
Interesting, John. I watched the interview with the Anthropic CEO, and I got to say I didn't really like him going into it, but after I watched his interview, he came off very likable, knows his business. He seems like just kind of a quiet confidence. Like he's not really worried about all these things that everyone else seems to be worried about all the time with AI. But yeah, one of the things he was talking about was like
Amadei.
Dario
Amadei.
Yeah. Gosh, where was I going with that? It has to do with the vectors. Gosh dang, I can't remember what I was saying.
So you saw an interview with him, and was he talking about the vectors?
Yeah. Gosh dang, it had to do with what you're saying. Anyways, it was good. It was a good interview. And like I don't know, it makes me think like I think about Oracle even, and like that product has been around forever, right? The Oracle database was in the 70s. I don't know, 80s.
Yeah. I think of 80s, but it could have been as early as
we still use a lot of Oracle databases, right? I mean, I don't know that it's a rapidly growing part of the market, but that's still a huge business that's out there. And just because like these new things are coming along doesn't necessarily mean that the old way of doing things goes away either, right?
I think of it as inertia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to go away quickly. They have a ton of customers, and it's another reason, connected back to what we were saying earlier about having the installed base is so important. That's one of their biggest assets is their installed base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think that like when you're talking about, because they're really focused on working with enterprises, I think is where I was going. Claude, he's taking Anthropic, like almost not. I don't know that they're yielding like the consumer space or like giving that to OpenAI. I still think they would love to compete in the consumer space, but clearly, Chat GPT as an app is the consumer app for AI, and it's orders of magnitude larger than Claude's app or Grok's app, despite Elon's threatened loss of Apple. And he's just talking about like when you're dealing with enterprises, he's like, okay, I'll go meet with the CEO, and they're like, yes, I'm in. We would love to do a deal with you. Okay, let's make it happen. But then he's like, then I have to deal with like 100,000 employees at this enterprise and somehow get them to use Claude and do it in a way that is complementary to their existing workflows and stuff. And like, that's challenging, right? There's a lot, like they have old Oracle databases, they have some MongoDB, they have data pipelines, they have on-prem, they have cloud, like very few companies can just like, okay, flip a switch. Now we use Claude in every workflow at the company, right?
Yeah, I wonder if we're skipping a step, and and it's a little bit too much to expect to have something like Anthropic Claude, which is basically the other chat GPT. To have something like that just show up into a large company and all those people, it's like you have a ton of workflows, and how do you actually get in there? How do you actually change the culture? Despite this thing is great, I use it every day. How do you get the culture to change at a large place like that?
Right. Like, and I think there's a lot of like companies like Anthropic and others, and even like, I mean, that's probably why IBM has been able to do what it's been able to do all these years. That like they are experts at getting in and helping, make art out of a pile of paint. You know what I mean? And like you have all the paint and all this stuff, and like IBM comes here and like holds your hand and shows you how to
organizational transformation.
Yeah. And so there's clearly a place for that. I've always been like sort of down on IBM, but I totally get the issue there is that you need these big firms that can get in their hands into this monstrosity of a corporation and actually change it and bring new technology.
Yeah, well, it used to be like a McKinsey too. Would be to get so yeah. There's something missing there because those companies, Oracle, like let's say. Oracle not as a technology company in this case, but more as a technology user, there's huge advantage they are going to get as they allow these things as they figure out how to get these things in there. And they got to figure out how to do it. But that's true across the board with different companies out there. For their AI companies, they're doing AI. For the non-AI companies, they have to get into AI by finding the right investments to make for bringing it into their business.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, despite what we might think, not every single employee at every corporation is focused on AI all the time like we are. Like if you work in tech, which we are, I would say we're in finance, but we invest in tech. So we spend all our time thinking and talking about it. But like the average business user is not just going to go out there and be like, oh, I heard about this new technology, I'm going to like try to bring it into work. Like they're just going to go do their job. And unless their job requires them to do that, they're probably not going to just natively start using Claude in the business somehow.
It's not easy, but I think the more it's being talked about, it's kind of, you can't miss it, every day more and more is being discussed around this. It can't be avoided. So they're the early comers, and they're the ones who hold back, and the ones that watch others do it, and then the ones who realize we can't wait any longer.
Right. And I guess that just kind of goes back to the beginning of this conversation, whether we're in a bubble or not. It just, when you think of it like that, it still feels like we're so early, like if the models themselves stopped improving, there's still so much work to be done getting this technology into the right places and into the hands of the right people. And it can make productivity, like it can improve productivity as is if it's implemented correctly. There's a couple of comments here from Craig. The risk of underinvesting is maybe what's adding to the hype. Therefore, the bubble talk, the FOMO seems to be the fuel. Definitely. I mean, I would agree with that, John.
Yeah. I guess it comes down to like how you jump in. It's like there will be parts, there'll be little mini pops that happen. I don't see a dominoes tumbling everything over.
Yeah. Epic has been around forever and should have implementation down to a science in the healthcare world, but even their implementation isn't seamless. I'm not familiar with Epic. Are you, John?
No.
Maybe you want to tell us, Craig, what company that is? I can't imagine these programs just up and changing to one of the new coding tools. I do think that if you're tech adjacent, like those clearly are the first adopters of this stuff. And if you're in the software business, you're using AI. Right?
Oh, you're absolutely. There's not. It's not that they're off all using something like Replit necessarily.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those tools are kind of, I think, being used more for smaller things and more for stuff that's starting from scratch,
prototyping.
But for existing code houses, like where I work, absolutely are we using AI, and whether it's Cursor or Windsurf, or Claude Code, we're using AI to get things done quicker.
What's your main IDE, John? Where do you spend your time if you're actually drafting and editing code?
Well, my IDE is Visual Studio, but VS Code, but that's just the kind of editor. But my go-to language model for code is Claude, Anthropic Claude, and I also have used a little bit Cursor, a little bit Windsurf as IDEs that are actual AI IDEs, and I'm just starting to play with Claude Code, which is a command line level interface for doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've tried to play around with because we've spent so much time on Replit. I've tried to play around with Windsurf and Cursor, and that's over my head. I think you've got to be a software developer to know.
Yeah, it's for developers.
To know how to do that. And like when I was playing with Windsurf, all I ended up doing was talking to an LLM, asking it how to do whatever Windsurf was telling me what to do. Like down, you're doing Python and pip install.
You got to know what you're getting. You got to know what you're trying to make happen. But if
you're working, it's sort of like doing almost like maintenance on a building versus building a new building from scratch, right? And if you have a existing 60-story skyscraper, you don't use the same tools to maintain that as you would if you were building a new house, right?
And it's a 2-story house,
right?
It's a 60-story skyscraper,
right?
Because you're talking about zero code and then go make it versus, hey, AI, go reach into my 400,000 lines of code and see if you can understand what's going on, and it actually really can if you help it along.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you get all that context to the AI? Like, how do you
So that's a $1 million question. So like Windsurf can read what it wants. You give it you expose it to your whole code base, and it's doing little like text searches of parts and looking around and until it's like, aha, I found it.
Okay.
When I'm mostly doing it, I am finding the pieces where I know I was going to be making changes, and I'm doing a lot of copy paste, and I'm providing code files or pieces of code files into the kind of project area of a
let me see if I can describe like the workflow. Like you have a repository somewhere like GitHub or something, right? And then I want to make this change to the interface or something, or the database or whatever. And so then you would go maybe download a couple of those files.
Well, no, when you have GitHub, you've got already all the files locally as well as up on the server. So you're doing things, git push, git pull kind of things that kind of keep it updated, but it's all right on your own kind of machine. And then you're reaching in, and because you've been doing it manually, and if you are a coder, you're dealing with all of those files. And I said it's like 400 500,000 lines of code or something. It's in the form of probably 500 files or 800 files or something of code. It's like I know where to look. I know what the stuff is, because I was going to go do it myself anyway. It's just was going to take me a week, and instead it can take me 2 hours.
Right. And so when you are talking to Claude Code or whatever, like you might tell it, hey, go into this, I'm working in this file or something like that, and point it kind of in that direction.
Yeah, well, if I'm doing a windsurf or Claude Code or things like that, it's in a place where it can just, I can tell it about them, and it's like, thanks for telling me. I know all the stuff that's there. I'll go grab what I need. But if I'm working with more Claude, which is like more like GPT, then I'm having to provide those files sort of as attachments, or bringing them in. It's like in Google Drive in a folder. You're bringing them all into the one place, or a copy of them. And then saying, all right, let's go.
John, do you do any like DevOps stuff, or are you not on that side of things?
I mean, we all have to do some things there, but yeah, it's not my.
That's sort of like one of the things I've learned recently too. That's a kind of its own specialty, right?
Yeah, right.
Like if you're there are people and they're a DevOps guy, and that's what they do.
Yeah, like, so they're in a way kind of enabling developers to do what they do, because they're keeping the whole cloud and the environment set up the way it needs to be, and this server getting copied over to there and so forth. And then as you're going and taking code that a bunch of developers are working on, you're kind of, and Cody's going to kill us for getting so technical, but you kind of have to get that stuff out to the customer. There's all this stuff that they go and do there. So like they're the programmer's programmer.
They're sort of I guess the middleman between like the builders, the true builders, and the end product and the user, I guess, and making.
I would put the product manager in that space, and I would put the DevOps as in between the code and the iron.
Oh, okay. I see.
The code and the cloud.
I see. Okay. The other direction. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I saw that and we're getting along here, but I did see the other day somebody, one of the main, was Amazon or like one of the main tech companies, said that they're now having like coding as part of their product manager interviews, which they didn't used to, because like they're like, if you're a product manager and you have these tools now, you can come up with products, you can prototype, you can come up with functionality on your own.
Yeah.
And you actually don't have to know how to code, but like that is like, why would you as a product manager not be using some of these new tools to help that side of things?
And I went the other way, right? I was a product manager and a VP of product for 10 or a dozen years. But I kept my kind of technical chops, and I made the move I wanted to go to the technical side and to be actually building stuff. And that's what I do now. Interesting.
Well, cool, John. That was I learned a lot from these calls as always, and your expert. I love getting into the technical stuff with people that do it every day, because as good as AI is, I can't understand like the human side of it from AI. It's not the same as talking to you, and it's like, oh no, this is really how we humans do the software. You know what I mean? I can have the AI trying to explain it to me, but it's not the same as hearing it from a human that's been doing it for 20 or 30 years or whatever it is. And no, this is really how it all ties together. Like that makes so much sense to me. So I appreciate it.
For sure. Anyway.
Yeah, but it has like big investing implications, because I'm focused a lot on software right now and at the hedge fund, because I think there's huge opportunities, because a lot of these software stocks are at like 52-week lows, like Salesforce and Adobe and Workday and so many, like not just those infrastructure companies like Confluent and all these. So there's sort of like this big divergence in the world of software, and you have a handful that are like trading at huge premiums. You have the Palantirs and Oracles of the world, which are trading at valuations they've never traded at before. And then you have like the Salesforce, which has never been this cheap before. And so trying to figure all this out, I think there's some major opportunity in understanding what's happening in the world of software right now. So, John, last thoughts? We'll wrap it up.
Just a pleasure talking to you again.
Yeah. There's just a couple comments in. He's talking about DevOps. They're the maintenance.
Yeah, they're the maintenance folks, right? They're the human infrastructure.
Yeah. And then he just asked if we have any plans to invest in Adobe. We don't right now. We've looked at Adobe a lot. Adobe actually is one of the software applications that I do think is probably at risk of being disrupted, and that's what the market's pricing in. And it's not crazy cheap. It's you know, and the growth is probably going to slow down. I mean, if you're doing photo editing and that kind of stuff, the AI is so freaking good at that now, you know, that, I mean, it's not like, it's so much like Adobe is such a different scenario than Salesforce to me, you know, like Salesforce is an app. Yes. And you could build your own version of a CRM right now. But like, why would you do that? And why would you go through all the effort to rebuild what Salesforce has already built? I mean, save money, obviously that's a potential, but the risk is that you screw it up and your CRM system doesn't work. And if you're an enterprise with millions of customers or hundreds of thousands of customers, even, there's just like, that's too large of a risk. You're not going to cancel your Salesforce subscription. And not to mention that they have all your data for years and years and years about your customers, right? Know everything about your customers. But Adobe, like, as far as I can tell, Adobe does not have that sort of stickiness with the data and with the, like, if you're in the photo editing design world, like, there are pure play AI competitors that are better products than Adobe.
Figma.
So, yeah, Figma came public last week or 2 weeks ago. Did you see that, John?
You think so? Yeah.
Yeah, and
we were going to get acquired by Adobe.
Adobe were going to buy them. Yeah, no, so Figma it came public, and I think it's like a $15 billion valuation or something like that. And the stock immediately tripled.
Designers love it. Yeah. I've been using it for years too.
Yeah. I did a lot of work on the product, and it makes so much sense to me. Basically, it's almost like a collaborative environment where your designers, your UX people, your product managers, everybody can get in there and work on, and multiple designers can work at the same time instead of it being in like little disparate, you know,
yes,
this guy's working on a logo, this guy's working on the whatever, you know, it's all happening in Figma. Everybody can see what's going on. So I think it seems to me like a great platform. I think, you know, if the price will come down, we'll pick up some Figma.
Anyway, good seeing you, and maybe we'll see you next week, huh?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks everybody. Appreciate all the questions too.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.